So it's a new month, so new topic for midweek. And the topic for this month is proof that Christianity is true. So effectively what we'll be doing is we'll be starting at nothing, zero belief in anything, and walking our way all the way to Christianity, and then talking about different facets of that all the way through the month. So we'll get as far as we can on this stuff tonight. More of kind of an introductory points, the first kind of points of nothing into some sort of belief in God, and then we'll build on that in future weeks. And we'll have plenty of time this month for some pushback so that we can work through any challenges, because obviously Christianity is not held as a belief by everybody in the world, so there's plenty of challenges to it, but we'll just take it from nothing, go all the way in. So to kick that off, starting with nothing, the first step, in, if you want to go to the next slide, is something called the Kalam cosmological argument. Can you guys read that? Smaller than I was expecting. The Kalam cosmological argument. I honestly think if you're trying to prove the existence of God, we'll have 5 steps here to prove it. But I almost think you could just stop here, and then this is about all you need. The top atheist philosophers in the world can't handle this argument. And anybody who can understand this argument doesn't have a pushback to it. Also, all these slides we'll have up on the website too, if you want to look at them later, just so you know. So the first step of the argument is I either exist or I don't exist. Those are the 2 options. That's fair, right? I either exist or I don't exist. Those are only 2 options. Luckily for us, Rene Descartes, a philosopher in 1644, answered this question for us, that I think, therefore I am. So because I'm able to think, because I'm self-aware, therefore I know I exist. Very simple argument. It's widely held by philosophers. So I think it's fair to say I exist. If I exist, there's 2 options. There's either a universe around me, a universe exists, or it doesn't exist. Universe exists or it doesn't exist. Well, the universe is the best explanation for the evidence around us, for what we see, what we observe, what we interact with. There's some popular pushback of recent years about whether we're in a simulation or the universe isn't actually true, that kind of a thing. The issue is there's no positive evidence for those ideas, and so there's plenty of positive evidence for us being in a actual physical universe. So if you're thinking if you're thinking what is the most rational thing for me to believe, it would be going with the positive evidence, not with something that's a possible idea but doesn't have positive evidence associated with it. So I think it's fair to say the universe exists, yeah? So if the universe exists, then either it had a beginning or it did not have a beginning. Those are your 2 options if the universe exists. It either had a beginning or it did not have a beginning. Now we know that our universe had a beginning. 3 of the reasons that tell us that. One is the second law of thermodynamics, which says that the universe is running out of energy and running out of heat. And so if it's running out, that means at one point it was full of energy, and at one point it'll be at no energy. And we're in the middle. If the universe just had a constant energy, then we could say it might be eternal. But the fact that it's running out of energy, we know that it had a start where it was full of energy, and then it'll have an end where it doesn't have any energy. Another reason why we know that the universe has a beginning is because of the Big Bang singularity. The universe is expanding away from one central point. So if the universe was just sitting in place, or if it was all going the same direction or something like that, you might be able to say the universe didn't have a beginning. You might be able to say the universe is eternal. But it's coming from one point outward. And so it started somewhere. It all started in that one point. The third reason is the concept of infinity. You can't, well, let's start here. Start at 1 and count to infinity. Try that right now. You're never going to get to infinity. You just keep counting and counting and counting and counting. It's impossible to cross an infinity. So if there was infinite days of the universe in the past, we would have never gotten to today, because you would have had to reach infinity in order to get to today. So, because there's infinitely days past. If you start counting yesterday and the day before yesterday and the day before that, you can't ever make it to infinity. So the way, by the nature of infinity, the fact that we exist means that the universe had a beginning. So for those three reasons, we know the universe has a beginning, which is that it used to be a very controversial topic. In the last 20 years or so, it's not as controversial. I think most philosophers and physicists agree. So if the universe had a beginning, then it was either caused or it was not caused. Something that had a beginning was either caused or it wasn't caused. Now, everything that has had a beginning ever has a cause. There are absolutely no examples of something that started to exist and did not have a cause. A common objection to this point is, what about God? So he had a cause? What was his cause? Well, see, God didn't have a beginning, so he didn't need the cause. He's also non-physical, so he doesn't apply to the laws of the universe. But anything within the universe that has ever had a beginning has a cause, and there's no examples of the contrary. So if I exist and the universe around me exists and the universe had a beginning and the universe was caused, there's only two options. Either it was caused by a personal agent or it was caused by no personal agent. A being would be a personal agent, or it was caused by a no personal agent. An example of an impersonal cause would be event-event causation. So if the wind blows and a tree falls down and then the leaves fly out and then you slip on a leaf and fall down, that's a bunch of events causing other events. The wind was an event, caused the tree falling down. That's an event. That's an impersonal cause, event-event causation. There's a couple problems with that for the beginning of the universe. One is that, by definition, there were no events prior to the beginning of the universe. The beginning of the universe is the beginning of events. So you can't have event-event causation without an event causing it. Secondly, if you want to redefine that and say there were events before the beginning of our universe, what that causes is an endless regression. Well, if some event caused our universe to begin, then some event would have had to cause that event. And then some event would have had to cause that event. And then some event would have had to cause that event. And you get back to the endless regression infinity problem. And then also, there's always that question of what started the first event. It's the same question we're asking about the universe. Even if you think an event caused the universe, an impersonal event caused the universe, what caused that? So it can't be no agent, no personal agent. So it has to be a personal agent. And that personal agent has to be someone who has not had a beginning, someone who has not been caused, who was not created, who is spaceless, who is timeless, who is immaterial, who exists outside of the universe, independent of the universe, who is supernatural, beyond nature, who transcends nature's laws, who is powerful, who is intelligent, who is active, who is free of their own free will, able to make the choice to create the universe. All of those things have to describe, based on the argument, the person who started the universe, who began the universe. And that sounds a whole lot like the Christian God to me. So just a simple walk through That process, just two choices, two choices, two choices. And it gets that, well, obviously, God exists. Isn't that fun? Simple. Nobody's answered that. I'm telling you. Biggest atheist philosophers, they got nothing. All right. I think this is the only one we're going to have time. The only other one we're going to have time for. The teleological argument, which states, it first starts with the concept that the universe is miraculously fine-tuned. So there are a whole bunch of different constants and quantities in the universe that are so exact. The numbers behind these constants and quantities are so exact that if they were off by even a little bit, that no life could exist anywhere, and most likely the universe couldn't continue to exist. I'll give you two examples of them. There's a whole ton. I could list off 10, but there's more than that. But I'll give you two examples. One is the gravitational constant. The gravitational constant is so precise that if it was off by 10 to the 60th power, 10 to the 60th power, that no life could exist at all and the universe couldn't exist. To put that into as an analogy, if you take all the grains of sand on Earth, all of the grains of sand, and one of them, you just took one grain of sand, and that was wrong, that number was that much off, then no life or the universe couldn't exist. Because the universe would have either, if the gravity was too high, it would have either collapsed back on itself after the Big Bang, let's say, it would have collapsed back on itself, or it would have expanded too fast to where nothing would have ran into anything and no planets could have formed or anything. It just expanded into nothingness. So it's so precise that one grain of sand off out of all the sand in the world and universe wouldn't have existed. Another example is the mass and energy in the universe is equally distributed throughout the universe. And if it was off, if the distribution of mass and energy throughout the universe was off by 10 to the 10th power to the 123rd power, 10 to the 10th to the 123rd power, if it was off by that much, then the universe wouldn't be life permitting. And that is such a big number, there's not an analogy to give you behind that number. Like it's more than all the atoms in the universe, and like that number is just so astronomically big. Like there's no analogy to give you like grains of sand to show you how big that number is. But if it was off by even that much, no life permitting in the universe. So that fine tuning exists. That's not debated. All science knows the constants and quantities of the universe are that specific that if it was off by that much, nothing would exist. Atheists, physicists think that is remarkable. They just like it's agreed upon. So the question is, why is that the case? Like, how did the universe become so fine-tuned? How did it hit those numbers exactly? That's the question. It either happened due to necessity, like the universe necessitated those quantities to become that specific, or due to chance, it just happened to happen that way, or due to design. So it can't be due to necessities because the constants and the quantities are not determined by the laws of nature. So it makes no sense for, like, there's nothing to necessitate it, and there's no evidence to suggest that fine-tuning is necessitated by anything in the universe. Those quantities and constants could have been anything, and the universe would have done different things, like collapse into itself or whatever it was going to do, but there's nothing that forced those constants and quantities to be what they are. So it's not necessity. The other option is chance. This is the most popular explanation among atheists. And the problem with chance is that those probabilities of all of those constants and quantities being just right, it is such an astronomically small probability of all that happening. I just gave you two examples, but there's a whole bunch of these quantities in the universe that any one of them off by that much and nothing works. And the chance of that happening just by chance is like laughable. like totally laughable. So it's laughable to think that that's true. In addition to that, there's a lot of things that have irreducible complexity, which is a concept that if you take one piece out of the puzzle, nothing works at all. Evolution, for example, necessitates improving over time, over a long period of time. But something like a mousetrap, this is something we created, but just by analogy, if you take any piece of the mousetrap out, it does not work like a mousetrap anymore. So you can't evolve into a mousetrap because there's different parts of that mousetrap that all need to work together and for it to work. So there's a whole bunch of things in our universe that are irreducibly complex. Our eyeballs, a vertebrate eye, are irreducibly complex. If one piece of that, like they couldn't just evolve into that. If one piece was broken, the whole thing wouldn't work. Bacteria, flagellum, blood clotting cascade, the immune system, protein folding, photosynthesis, all of those irreducibly complex to where if one piece was missing, the whole thing wouldn't work. So that adds to the chance, what are the odds that all of your pieces of your eyeball all just accidentally happen by genetic mutation all at the same time without necessitating each other, and it just by chance your eyeball just developed. It's like such a small probability. So fine-tuning of the universe, not by chance, it's not by necessity. So that just leaves it's by design. Somebody designed it to be that way. Another counter argument or another option for chance is the multiverse. If there's an infinite amount of other universes that create other universes, then maybe we could be the one universe that's perfect and all the other universes are terrible or you can't live in them or whatever. The problem with that is, number one, it just pushes the same problem that we have about our universe to the beginning of the multiverse. So you have the same problem. You're just talking about a multiverse instead of a universe. It doesn't explain the infinitely greater chance of us being in one of those terrible universes that life doesn't exist in. How did we make it here? Doesn't explain the infinite chance that we made it in this universe. Also, even if we made it into a life-permitting universe, it would probably be a very small universe, like just the size of the Earth, not a universe that's this big. So it makes the probability problem worse, not better, the multiverse. Also, there's no positive evidence for the multiverse. It's just an idea, but there's no reason to believe in it. There's no evidence for it, other than circular reasoning. Like, will I exist? So this is an explanation for my existence. So, you're using your existence alone as just like, well, it must be the multiverse because I'm here. It's just a circular reasoning, or just trying to find any explanation that doesn't have to do with God. All right, so 2 arguments out of the 5 to get to theism.